I'm Carolyn Giardino. Welcome to the Hollywood Reporter's Animation Shortcuts. I'm here with Josh Cooley, who is the director of Toy Story 4, and Jennifer Lee, who is the writer and one of the directors of Frozen 2. Welcome.
Thank you.
What character do each of you most identify with in your film?
I identify with Elsa. I identify with Forky. He's the newest toy to the Toy Story world. That is a handmade toy made out of spork. And so he doesn't understand kind of what's going on or why he's there. And there was a time early on in the film when I was like, what is happening? I'm trying to navigate this all as first-time director. And so I was pitching this idea to my wife, and she, this idea of having this sport character, doesn't get it. And she said, oh, that's you. Yeah, you're like that. And so I was like, no, you don't know, no. But that's totally me.
And which character would you like to be more like?
Wow, I hadn't thought about that one. I'd probably like to be more like Woody, just in the sense of that he's so driven to do the right thing no matter what. That makes me sound like a horrible person. Like I'm not like that. I admire that in him.
I think you're pretty driven.
Yeah.
And Jen?
So I definitely identify with Anna. It's always been Anna. I think she's feels everything too strongly. She's acts before she thinks, like me, but cares very deeply and doesn't give up on people, whether that's good or bad. And so she's kind of my emotional rock. She's not the most graceful, but her intention is pure and strong, and I admire that. And but the quirky way she talks and things I relate to very much. So she's. I think I've always said she's the anchor for the first film and the second film. She's the most grounded character.
And which character would you like to be more like?
I mean, there's no question, Elsa. I think, I mean, Elsa's her big sister. I look up to my big sister, and I think there's always that way. Anna looks up to Elsa like everything Elsa does incredible, and I do that same thing. And I'm, so proud of her, the way you are, like a family member. So, but she's got magical powers, so it'd be good.
Now you have some new cast members. Tell us about Sterling K. Brown as Lieutenant Matthias.
We were developing this character of this soldier who was anchored in the past and the present, had been around, had grit, had understanding, gravitas, but also warmth. And what we do often is we'll hear certain, I say hear because we'll listen to their voices, not particularly look at them, certain actors and actresses who they have all these layers, and I was just madly in love with Sterling's voice and all the diversity of characters he played. You knew that you were going to have a lot of fun playing with him, and you were going to get a really rich character. So we asked him to come in really early when Matthias was an idea, and he said, heck yeah, and he came in, it's about over the course of 2 years, and would brainstorm with us, develop with us, and he got me to improv with him, which is because he's so good, he gets you, and I was like the most embarrassing moments of my life, and he handled it gracefully, kindly, so just getting to work with him was just a dream.
And you had some new characters in your film as well.
Yes.
Tell us about how you created Duke Kaboom with Keanu Reeves.
Duke Kaboom, one of the joys of Toy Story is always seeing what these new toys are, the new characters that come into the world. And so we had an idea for a 70s stuntman that's built just to sit on the bike, so he's mostly on the motorcycle. And so we looked at just Canadian actors. And blind cast, we didn't know who it was. And I heard that voice, I'm like, wait, hold on, that's something, there's something there. And it ended up being Keanu. And we thought, well, he'll never say yes to this. And so we thought, well, what's the harm in asking? And he said, well, let me come up and meet you guys. And he came to the studio and just kind of walked him around and had lunch. And we were uncovering the story as we're talking about it, or uncovering the character. And to the point where he started posing and going, huh, ha, huh, like while he was sitting there, and stood up on the table and went, I'm Duke Kaboom, and was creating a scene. And it was something, it wasn't just the bigness of the character. He actually brought an emotion to it that I did not anticipate, and which was such a joy to hear and then to animate. It was really great.
Now you also, in this one, further developed a very independent Bo Peep.
Yeah.
Would you tell us about that?
Bo Peep was always the beginning of this movie. It was our code name for the movie was Peep internally. So she was always a part of it. She would always come into Woody's life somehow. And when we realized we can have her embody the thing that Woody's been afraid of for 3 movies, she's now a lost toy, he's been afraid of that forever, she becomes such an important character in his development. And so the great thing was we went back and looked at Bo Peep in the other 2 movies. She's only in Toy Story 1 and 2. And it's only about 6 minutes of screen time. It's not that much at all. We cut just that together. And we noticed that Bo Peep is actually a really strong character from the get-go. Whenever Woody is confused or frustrated because Buzz shows up or whatever, he would go to her and say, you know, I don't know what's going on. And she would say, look under your boot, look whose name is there. And she would kind of set him right back on track. So we just kind of expanded on what was already there. We took this character that was already kind of in the background, definitely almost a tertiary character, said we're going to take her out of her comfort zone. She's lived this whole other life, and now she's back, and what would that look like? And that's what we put on screen.
And now Elsa has become an icon in the LGBTQ community. Would you tell us about that response and your responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot to me and to us as filmmakers that she has. I love that through her being different in this beauty and she has inside of her that she's able to unleash. And Frozen was inspiring. And, you know, we talk a lot about it in Frozen 1 versus Frozen 2. She's wrestling with her powers and she doesn't have a romantic interest to that. It's kind of, we were never going there because it's not her journey. It's not where she is. She's trying to wrestle with her powers, carry the weight of a kingdom on her shoulders at that moment, but loving the power and strength of her in this moment and her individuality as she sort of accepts and strengthens who she is. And so that's kind of where we knew our journey was going for Frozen 2. I read Twitter and it means a lot. I don't know that we ever knew what Elsa would mean to people. I think we were building this woman who was struggling with who she was and not being the villainous character that of the original book of the Snow Queen, that she was sympathetic and emotional and had depth. But she doesn't have a lot of screen time in Frozen 1 compared to Anna, like you were saying, and so that the world's embraced her the way they have it. It means a lot. It's overwhelming, yeah.
Now, from the characters to the filmmakers, what are you seeing as far as more diversity and inclusion in the animation world?
We made a real effort to really make our background characters diverse. We knew we were going to have this huge carnival scene, tons of people in the background playing games, doing all sorts of stuff. There's so many different types of people of all shapes, sizes, colors, everything, and it's really fascinating the response I've seen online of people going like, look at that. They've actually done a freeze frame and they'll circle people and go like, that looks like me. One of the kids in Bonnie's kindergarten has a cochlear implant. And the response from that, just the fact that it's not a story point, but it's just there, and people were like moved to tears to see that because they were responding to it. So it's been really great.
I think one of the things I kept hearing more and more in the studio from particularly women in the studio is I was one of the first women in a creative leadership in the rooms with them, so they began to be more vocal. And that discovery of realizing that as we look for diversity and balance behind the scenes, not just people of color as well, not just gender, the having leaders who can inspire you to speak up and contribute because they reflect you a bit. And so we've made a real concerted effort in terms of the talent is all there, let that talent come forward and lead. And it's had a huge impact on the studio and in the best way. And our rooms are so much more balanced, and the filmmakers, it represents the world a lot better, I think. But everyone, people have the want, and so you just look together and communicate in different ways on how. And it's just been very positive for the whole studio, so.
Right. So to change subjects, Jon Favreau's The Lion King has sparked a lot of discussion about what is an animated movie. Do you consider it an animated movie, and what are your thoughts on that film?
I don't, yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a little busy, head down. I remember hearing Favreau say that his intent was that it's not, it's live action, like he's going for the look of live action. And the animals do move, even though they are animated, because you can't put mocap tennis balls on ping pong balls on a lion.
You can do it once.
Yeah,
but
you don't want to.
You're not gonna
get a very
survive
long
that
movie out of that. I think the intent is to make it look realistic. So It's an interesting question. I don't know if I have a full answer for it. I know you.
Yeah, or I feel strongly about it being not an animated film, in my opinion, using similar technologies. And for John, knowing for him it was visual effects driven towards realism, having a lot of fun with something we could never do before, is imagine ourselves really in that world. And to me, there's just a different goal from what animation has never tried to be real. Even with CG, which can create a sense of like, wow, that water or something, it's really part of the layers of the artistry of the entire piece of imagination that is an animated film. That nothing is striving for realism as much as striving for this believability, transcendence of regular life. So it's the opposite goal. So I feel like the two can exist together. There are blurred lines in terms of the technology, of course, but I do think it comes back to, are you trying to transport us to something other and beyond, or are you trying to create this realistic world like our world? And so it always feels easy for me, but when you have to have a meeting just to decide what the phlegm is like in a jar of lutefisk that goes in, that has to be built for the animated film and match the style of everything. It's like they don't go together. Mm-hmm. They're just, one is designed, from nothing. So
you view it as intent versus technique.
I think it's intent. That's better said. Yeah, intent versus technique.
So what animated film most inspired each of you to get into the business?
Oh, wow.
I have mine only because it was my first way into animation, and then it was Cinderella, and she was my rock. Growing up, I was obsessed with my little picture book from the film. I didn't see the film until I was probably 8, but I had the book. And her perseverance, I was bullied severely, so was she, and how she got through that the very Disney way of, through adversity, stay true to yourself, and when it's hard, believe in yourself, and the beauty of that. So for me, I always knew I didn't have the drawing skills of the extraordinary people I got to sit with today, but I would, as a child, draw my stories and then write my stories, and they were all geared very much in that fairy tale world of suffer and it's okay, you'll find your way through.
I loved watching. I kind of have two. Peter Pan was the first one because I don't ever want to grow up. I think that's the reason why. And then when I saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that was the film that made me go from loving movies and animation to wanting to work in movies and animation. Just the idea of that film, basically Chinatown with cartoon characters, it just hit me perfectly.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us, and congratulations on your films.
Thank you.